All right, so today we are going deep, deep, deep into the U.S. Census Bureau's plan for the 2030 census.
And we're talking some serious tech upgrades.
Oh, yeah, massive scale. And we've got a really fascinating source for this deep dive. We've got an actual draft performance work statement for potential contractors.
A behind-the-scenes peek at how they're getting ready for this gigantic operation.
It's pretty cool. You know, it's easy to think of the census as just like counting people, you know, how many people are where.
Yeah, just a head count.
But it goes so much deeper than that.
It really does. This data is what a representative government is built on.
Okay.
It determines how many seats each state gets in Congress.
Right, to make sure things are fair.
Exactly. Fair representation. But it goes even further than that. It impacts things like civil rights monitoring and even funding for those essential programs in your community.
Hold on, funding for programs. What kind of programs are we talking about here?
We're talking education, healthcare infrastructure, all kinds of things. The census data helps make sure that those resources are allocated fairly and effectively.
So it's not just like some abstract government project. This is data that actually like affects me on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It shapes our lives in really tangible ways.
So, okay, if I'm like a business owner, how would this data be relevant to me? It's not like I'm applying for those programs.
Just for businesses, census data can be super valuable. Let's say you're a business owner and you're trying to decide where to open a new store. Census data can give you insights into things like population density, demographics, income levels, all those factors that you need to make good decisions.
Okay, now it's starting to click. So it really does touch every part of life. But let's be real, gathering data on this scale in 2030 has got to be logistically just a nightmare.
Yeah, it's a massive undertaking.
Yeah.
The Census Bureau's got some serious hurdles in front of them. You know, we've got a more diverse population than ever, these really complex living situations, and there's always the possibility of disruptions,
Yeah.
natural disasters, things like that.
Sure.
And then, of course, the big one that everybody's talking about these days, data privacy.
It's a huge deal.
Yeah, it's a huge concern in our digital age.
Absolutely. So how are they tackling all of these challenges? They can't just be using the same old methods.
Right. This is where it gets really interesting. They are going all in on technology.
Right.
A complete system overhaul. We're talking DevSecOps, cloud-native coding, scaled, Agile, all the buzzwords.
Yeah, you're hitting all the buzzwords.
That you would expect from a 21st century tech transformation.
Okay, but what do those buzzwords actually mean in the context of the census? Like, break it down for me.
So DevSecOps, it's all about integrating security practices throughout the entire software development lifecycle.
Okay.
From the very beginning.
Got it. So you're building a secure fortress from the ground up.
Exactly. And then cloud native.
What is that? So they're just storing everything on a server somewhere.
It's more than just storage.
Right.
It means that their applications are designed specifically to run in the cloud so they can take advantage of all the things the cloud has to offer.
Like what kinds of things?
Like scalability and flexibility.
Yeah.
Imagine being able to scale your processing power up or down instantly, depending on the demand.
Whoa.
That's the power of the cloud.
So they're building a system that can basically handle anything. More data, more users, more complexity.
The system's ready for anything.
But what's the end goal here? What are they hoping to achieve with this whole tech revolution?
Well, they've laid out some very ambitious goals.
Okay.
They want to lower lifecycle costs, reduce their technical debt, get faster data analysis, and, of course, improve data quality and integrity.
They want to do it all.
They want the 2030 census to be the most accurate and efficient one yet.
Okay, I am all for efficiency. Time is money, as they say. But
Yeah.
when we're talking about something as important as the census, I'd say accuracy is probably the top priority.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
They are laser focused on getting the data right, and they're using technology to do it.
Okay, so how are they using technology to make sure the data's right?
One way they're approaching this is by developing a standardized data architecture. It's like a blueprint for making sure that there's consistency and accuracy across all of their systems.
Gotcha. So no more data silos or conflicting information.
Right. Everything is neatly organized and standardized.
But we are talking about a massive amount of data here. How can they possibly process all of that quickly and accurately?
Well, that's where they're focusing on high-velocity data processing.
High-velocity data processing.
Yeah, they're building systems that can handle a constant influx of data and analyze it in near real time.
Wait, hold on. Did you just say near real time?
Yes,
As in, they're going to be getting insights as the data is coming in.
that's the plan.
That's wild.
It's a complete game changer for data analysis.
Yeah.
Instead of waiting months for results, they're going to be able to identify and address any potential issues super early on.
So it's like having this like live dashboard
Yeah.
that's constantly monitoring the data and flagging any anomalies. That's incredible. But let's not forget about those 5 task areas you mentioned earlier. Remember those. I have to admit, I'm really curious about the advanced data science and data management bit.
Ah, yes. That's where the magic happens.
Okay.
They're not just collecting data, they're using all the latest and greatest data science techniques to extract meaningful insights from it. And then they're going to use that to inform data-driven decisions.
So it's not just about numbers, it's about understanding what those numbers mean
Right.
and using them to make things better.
Exactly.
But I gotta ask, with all this talk about fancy tech and data analysis, how are they making sure that the human element doesn't get lost in the process?
They're very aware of that challenge.
Yeah.
One of the key components of all of this modernization is training.
Oh, okay.
They're making sure that they're investing in their staff and ensuring that they have the skills and the knowledge to use all of these new technologies effectively.
It makes sense, right? You can have the coolest, most advanced tools in the world, but if you don't know how to use them,
It's pointless.
pointless. Exactly. Speaking of tools, what kind of systems are they actually building here? Am I picturing like rows of servers and blinking lights?
Well, they'll definitely have the servers.
Yeah.
But it's more than just hardware. We're talking sophisticated data warehousing platforms, quality assurance systems, applications specifically designed for data analysis and reporting.
And I bet they're using some pretty cutting-edge stuff, right?
Any more cool tech buzzwords we should know about?
Well, they do mention in here a requirement for something called SAFE certified practitioners.
Safe.
Yeah, which suggests that they're really serious about adopting the scaled agile framework for managing this super complex project.
I have to admit I'm not familiar with SAFE. What's the gist?
Basically, it's a framework for scaling agile methodologies to large enterprises,
Okay,
which is what we're dealing with here.
that's true.
And it emphasizes things like collaboration, flexibility, iterative development, all things that are essential for a project this big.
So they're not just throwing tech at the problem and hoping for
Yeah.
the best. They've got like a structured approach. Yeah, a structured approach to make sure everything runs smoothly.
Okay, now I am curious about something you mentioned earlier, chaos engineering.
Oh, yeah.
What is that?
This is one of the really interesting details. They're planning to intentionally introduce disruptions during testing
Okay.
so they can see how the system responds under pressure.
So they're trying to break their own system.
Essentially, yes.
Right.
It's a very proactive way to build resilience and make sure that they're prepared for anything.
It's kind of a bold move.
It is,
Ooh.
but it makes sense. When you're dealing with something as critical as the census, they can't afford any surprises.
No, they can't. So they're building a system that's not just efficient and accurate, but also robust and adaptable.
Exactly. They're even thinking about future advancements that might come down the line and making sure that the infrastructure and applications they build today can handle the tech of tomorrow.
That's a lot to think about.
Yeah, it is.
But I have a feeling we're just getting started here.
Oh, we are just scratching the surface. We still have a lot more to cover, including some of the challenges and opportunities that they're going to be facing as we get closer to 2030. And we'll also touch on some of the broader societal implications of this whole technological transformation.
I'm hooked. All right, well, let's take a quick break to let all of this amazing information sink in, and we'll be back soon with part 2 of this deep dive.
See you soon.
Welcome back. So we've talked about why the census data is so important, and now we're really getting into the how.
Right. All the challenges and the opportunities that come with this massive modernization.
Exactly. So, they're walking this tightrope between like this really groundbreaking technology and safeguarding this incredibly sensitive data.
Yeah, that's right.
What are some of the biggest hurdles that they're expecting to run into?
Well, I think the one that really jumps out is cybersecurity.
Of course.
I mean, you're talking about protecting this incredibly valuable data,
Yeah.
but the people who are trying to get that data, they're constantly coming up with new ways to do it.
It's like a constant arms race.
Exactly, an arms race.
And, we've all seen the headlines about data breaches and stuff.
Yeah.
This is a very real threat.
It's not just theoretical.
So what are they doing to mitigate that risk?
One of the things that they mentioned in the document is this idea of zero trust principles.
Okay, I've heard of that, but what does that actually mean?
It basically means that you don't trust any user or device by default,
Okay.
even if they're inside the Census Bureau.
Oh, wow.
So it's a very multi-layered approach.
Okay.
You've got things like multi-factor authentication and continuous monitoring.
So it's like having security checkpoints at every level.
Exactly. You want to make it as hard as possible for unauthorized access.
Absolutely. But even with like the best security in place, there's always the human element.
Right. The human element is huge. I mean, you can have the most sophisticated system in the world.
Yeah.
But if somebody clicks on the wrong link in an email
Yeah.
or misconfigures something,
It can all fall apart.
it creates a vulnerability. Yeah, for sure.
So it sounds like training and cybersecurity awareness are a big part of this modernization too.
A huge part. It's not just about the tech.
Right. You got to have the people to back it up.
You need the people who know how to use it.
Yeah, for sure. But, shifting gears for a second, beyond just the cybersecurity, what are some of the other challenges that they're anticipating?
Well, one that often gets overlooked is just the complexity of managing a project this big.
Yeah, I mean, this is huge.
It's massive.
Yeah.
You've got multiple contractors, all with their own expertise,
Yeah.
their own timelines, their own communication styles.
Oh, yeah, that's a recipe for disaster.
And then you've got to integrate that with all the internal teams at the Census Bureau.
How do they make sure that everybody's on the same page?
Well, collaboration and communication are key. You've got to have really clear roles and responsibilities, regular check-ins, and make sure everybody understands what the goals of the project are.
It's like trying to conduct an orchestra where everybody's from a different country.
That's a great analogy. Yeah, keeping everybody on the same sheet of music.
Exactly. But even with the best planning and communication, there are going to be hiccups along the way, right? Like unexpected stuff comes up.
Oh, absolutely.
How are they building in the flexibility to adapt to those challenges?
Well, that's where their embrace of Agile methodologies really comes in.
Agile methodologies, okay.
Remember that SAFE framework we were talking about?
Yeah.
That's all about iterative development.
Okay.
Breaking things down into smaller chunks and adapting to feedback as you go.
So it's like navigating a ship, through stormy waters.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to adjust to the conditions.
Exactly. You're constantly adjusting your sails.
Exactly. So they're building in that agility from the beginning.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, things are going to go wrong.
Knowing that things are going to change.
Yeah, and we've got to be ready for it.
And they're prepared for that.
Yeah.
But let's not just talk about the challenges. There are also some amazing opportunities here.
Okay. I'm ready for some good news. What are some of the potential upsides of this modernization?
Well, one of the most exciting possibilities is just vastly improved accuracy.
Okay.
Remember those near real-time data processing capabilities?
Yeah.
That means that they can spot problems with the data much earlier in the process.
Okay.
And that means that the data set will be more reliable and insightful.
So it's like a built-in quality control system
Exactly.
that's constantly running in the background, making sure that everything's okay.
And it's not just accuracy. It's also the potential to make the census data much more accessible.
Okay.
And user-friendly.
Mm.
Imagine like these really intuitive online portals where researchers, policymakers, even everyday people can easily explore and analyze the data.
I love that idea. Like instead of this data being locked away in some government database, it's actually available to everybody.
Yeah, democratizing the data.
It could lead to all sorts of new discoveries and insights.
It really could. We could see a huge increase in data-driven decision-making.
Okay.
Not just in government,
Yeah.
but also in communities and businesses and even individual households.
Okay, so we're talking about empowering people with information so that they can make better choices.
Exactly.
I love it.
Okay.
But zooming out for a minute, what are the bigger societal implications of all of this? How is this going to change our relationship with data?
That's a really interesting question, and it's a really important one. I think on one hand, you have the potential for much greater transparency and accountability.
Okay.
Because with more accurate and accessible data, we can actually hold our institutions and our leaders accountable for what they're doing.
And it could also help us to better understand, the challenges that we're facing and come up with better solutions.
Exactly. But of course, there's always the other side of the coin.
Right.
There's also the potential for misuse of this data.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be really careful about privacy concerns and make sure that there are safeguards in place to prevent things like discrimination or exploitation.
So it's like a double-edged sword.
It is incredibly powerful,
Yeah.
but it could also be really harmful.
If it falls into the wrong hands.
Exactly. So we need to have some really serious conversations about ethics and data governance.
About what it means to use this data responsibly.
Yeah, because technology is moving so fast, we need to make sure that our laws and our ethical frameworks are keeping up.
And it can't just be like a one-time conversation, right? Like this has to be something that we're constantly reevaluating.
It's an ongoing process. We need to be constantly questioning things
Yeah.
and reassessing and making adjustments.
Because things are changing so quickly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We have to make sure that we're using data in a way that benefits everyone.
Not just a select few. Absolutely. Okay, well, let's take another break to digest all of that, and we'll be back for the final part of our deep dive, where we'll explore some thought-provoking questions and talk about the long-term implications of all of this.
And we'll leave you with something to think about as you consider the role of data in your own life.
Okay, so we're back and ready for the final part of our deep dive into all things 2030 census.
We've covered a lot of ground, haven't we?
We have, yeah. We've talked about why it matters, explored their plan for modernization, and even gotten into some of the potential issues, the ethics of it all.
The tricky parts.
Yeah, exactly. And now I want to kind of shift gears a bit,
Okay.
get a little more philosophical, really think about the bigger picture here, the so what.
I like it. Let's get philosophical.
Okay, so one thing that keeps coming back to me is this idea that the Census Bureau is essentially trying to future-proof the census.
Maybe
Not just trying to solve the problems of 2030.
Right.
They're building a system that can adapt as technology keeps changing.
Right, because who knows what's coming next?
Exactly. And it makes me think, what does that tell us about data in our society? Why are they going to all this trouble?
Well, I think it shows just how important data has become. It's not just a side effect of what we do anymore.
Yeah.
It's like the foundation of everything. It influences policy, it drives all this new innovation, and it impacts every part of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And the Census Bureau, they're recognizing that by making this huge investment in technology.
And it's not just about how much data we have, it's about the quality, right?
Absolutely.
And how easy it is to access.
And ultimately what we can learn from it.
Yeah, exactly. So I can't help but wonder, how are all these changes going to affect how we interact with this data down the road?
Well, imagine a world where census data is constantly being updated and analyzed,
Whoa.
like in real time.
Okay.
It would be this constantly evolving picture of society.
That's mind-blowing.
Think of what researchers and policymakers and businesses could do with that.
Yeah, it would be incredible. But also kind of scary, right?
It is a lot of power.
Because we've already talked about the potential for misuse. How do we make sure that doesn't happen as we rely on this data more and more?
That's the big question. And honestly, there's not a simple answer. But I think the first step is remembering that technology is just a tool.
Okay.
It's up to us how we use it.
Yeah.
We have to create ethical guidelines and laws that make sure data is used for good.
To protect people.
Exactly. So it's not just on technologists to figure this out.
Right.
It's on policymakers, ethicists, even everyday people. We all need to be part of this conversation.
And that conversation needs to keep happening as technology changes, right?
Absolutely. It's not a one-time thing.
Yeah.
It's a constant process of questioning and reassessing and adapting.
And as we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. We've talked a lot about the big picture today.
Yeah, we've gone deep.
But it all comes back to the individual. So how do you, as a listener, see yourself interacting with census data in the future? It's something to really think about.
It is. How do we want our data to be used? What are our hopes and fears about all of this? These are conversations we need to have with ourselves, with our families, and our communities.
Because ultimately it's about people, right?
It is.
It's about understanding each other and the world better. And we have to make sure that data is used to help people, not to hurt them. So keep asking those questions, stay informed, and let's figure this out together.
I love that. And with that, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. It's been a fascinating conversation, and I hope our listeners learned a lot about the Census Bureau's plans and the challenges and possibilities that lie ahead.
I agree. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into the world of data and technology. So until then, stay curious and stay informed.